I'm Jason and I'm the CTO of Mumsnet, and it's my job to run a team called PDT, which is Product Data Technology. And essentially what we do is we build, we run and we optimize Mumsnet. And over the last couple of years we've been going through quite a big transformation, and that's what I want to talk about today. And in particular how culture is really the thing that we really had to address the most to try and get our transformation right. So before we start, who are Mumsnet for those that you don't know? Well, we've been around since 2000, and we're essentially a website and a mobile app for parents. And our job is to try and make parents' life easier. And that's both for existing parents and new parents to be. And we do that through our forums. We're essentially a community, people talking to each other, giving advice, and then through expert guides, you know, the top 5 buggies to buy this year, what to do when you're trying to conceive, all that kind of stuff. We're on most major channels with voice coming soon. And we've grown organically to be the #1 in our space. So we've spent past 19 years doing quite a few things to get this right. Reach is pretty good. We're at 12 million unique users, 120 million page impressions a month. We're sticky, which is great news, and we're trusted. So as you can see, that's a bit about us, and lots of kind of good messages there. But as well as all the good things, there are also lots of problems, and this is why we face our transformational change. So the last time we actually updated our forums, which is our core technology, was 2001. It's probably the first build, to be honest. The last time we changed our publishing technology was 2014. We've got very, very outdated code bases. We've got old infrastructure. We're still running on physical hardware, which is just nuts in this day and age. We've got high technical debt. We've got it's really slow for us to change and develop anything. And it's really hard to attract new talent, and that's such a key thing for being able to succeed in this day and age. So that's what's been happening internally. Externally, the world's changed. Expectations have changed around what people want from a digital product. The technology's changed. We've not been doing anything with machine learning. Our mobile offer isn't the best, yet it's where most of our traffic is. And the market's changed. There's new entrants coming in almost every month that are trying to do the same thing, and they're cooler, slicker, not going to say better. So what does this all mean? Sorry, there we go. It means we've got to go on a mission to transform ourselves. And about 2 years ago, we set ourselves this task. We said for Mumsnet to still be the #1 in 5-10 years' time, we've got to evolve. And we've got to do that in 2 ways. We've got to evolve the product. It's got to become relevant, and it's got to become up to date. And we've got to make sure we focus on our first-time pregnant and first-time mums, because our user base that made Mumsnet the site it is growing old, and their parenting journey is starting to come out of the space where we're of use for them. And secondly, we've got to transform our team, and this is the bit that I'm going to focus in on today. We've got to transform from what we call a Web 2.0 publisher, so we have a website, people are talking on it, we have content, and we support that, to a product and technology team that can actually build this next generation of services that we want to build. So just to give you some idea about the kind of scale of the challenge here, we set out by describing where are we now, this was 2 years ago, and where do we want to get to. So before, as we say, it was very, very much a kind of support function. So team of developers and designers, they fixed bugs, they added very, very small new features. Everything was manual, there's old technology, and it's not really a place you'd want to be. This is not where you're going to get top talent. So where do we want to be? So we came up with what does good look like, and this would be no surprise to any technology and product people in the room that in this day and age, this is the kind of stuff you want to be doing. So this is good, we've got a vision about where we want to go to, so how are we going to implement this? So first of all, let's take that vision, let's break it down into some OKRs, and let's roadmap that up so we can work out how we go from A to B over the next few years. We needed to change our operating model, so we decided on squads. This is the Spotify model where you put together cross-functional teams and you give them one specific area to focus on. And we've got 4 of them. We've got our core squad, which looks at keeping on the wheels on the stuff that we have at the moment. So it's all the business as usual stuff. It's adding new features that can be run at scale. and it's keeping things working. We then have our growth squad, which is all about optimizations. This is all about running experiments, A/B testing, hypotheses, things we can test out, hacky code so we can learn from our users and then we can get core to implement at scale. We've then got new technology. New technology is responsible for replatforming and bringing innovation into the business. And then we've got data, because a modern digital business needs to put data at the heart of everything. So we need to build data capturing and exploitation facilities and implement them. So we've got our new organization. We need a new operating model. And this was all really about implementing best practice. So how do we work on a general day-to-day basis? And there's lots of information about how to do that. We've heard a lot of it today. It's stuff like agile working, it's customer insight, it's build, measure, learn, and it's using best practice tools and techniques like continuous integration and continuous deployment. So there we go. We know where we're going. We've got the organization to do it, and we've got a delivery model. But finally, we wanted to look at culture, and this is the bit I'm going to dig into here, because we wanted to set the right culture for success. So we wanted to come up with as a team. If we, what do we want to be, and how do we want to see ourselves and value ourselves? And so that's what we spent quite a lot of time over the past 2 years trying to get right. So we started off by coming up with some principles. These are the values that you saw in the first presentation. So as a team, what is it what values do we want to embody? So what we did is we all got around the table, everybody involved, we bashed out some values and sort of said, okay, this is what we think we are. We want to think like a startup. We want to move fast, obsess over users, experiment, and ship often. We want to get it right first time, because rework is boring and nobody wants to do it. And we think this is all about communication, collaboration, and committing to quality. We want to be practical over perfection. We had quite a few problems where everything had to be perfect, perfectly engineered, perfectly designed, perfectly executed. And it was just so slow. And it meant we just couldn't get things in front of users and learn from them. And it was very wasteful. So we wanted to put effort where it really matters, to where it's really going to delight our users, and not to where users not into things that don't really matter to users. And we have to accept some technical debt and some design compromise in doing that. And so we wanted to also get away from the siloed teams that we had. We had a design team, an engineering team, and a testing team, and we'd throw work over the fence. And we wanted to kind of get into this idea that a squad designs something, builds it, tests it, runs it. And we kind of nicked that one from Amazon. You've probably seen that one before. But we think it works, and we think it works well. And finally, we wanted to have a continuous learning and innovation culture. So we wanted to invest in time for learning projects, and for innovation. So this is all good. So as a team, we've kind of know where we're going. We've got the models in place to know how we want to get there. We've got our set of values, what we can all follow. The only problem with all of this is when you actually dig into a lot of the values, you look at some of the academic research around it, you find that most of the time they just don't work. So you can state your values, you can get everyone bought into them, but people just don't pay any attention. It just doesn't stick. So I wanted to look into this a lot more, and I'm a bit of a theorist. So I love a model, and I love a bit of theory. And so there's two models that I really liked that I wanted to apply to our team and see where we got to with it. So the first one is the work of a guy called Edgar Schein, and he came up with this thing called the organizational culture model. Some of you may have seen this before. What he said is organizational culture, it's kind of manifests from sort of three things. At the top, we have what we call artifacts, and these are visual representations of the organization. So buildings, logos, products, dress codes, conversations that we have, the language we use, terms that are specific to us. He said below that sit values. These are what he calls them espoused values. These are our values that we all said we share in these values. This is the stuff that you've just seen on the previous page, and it's the stuff we've talked a lot about today, about having your company values. But below that, there's what he calls basic assumptions, and this is where the culture of your company really sits. And it's very, very intrinsic. It comes from the experiences people have, and from the history of and the unwritten rules of what happened in the workplace. And the problem with the basic assumptions is if they're not aligned to your values just won't stick. And this is what I kind of wanted to dig into a little bit more. Is we've got these values, but if our basic assumptions about how we work are not right, it's not going to work. So I thought, what I'll do is we will use the work of another guy called Jerry Johnson, and this fits quite nicely with the work of Edgar Schein. And he said to understand culture, you have to look across 6 factors, and it's these 6 factors here. And what you need to do, and what's important about these 6 factors is what you do in them is they send signals into your organization that define the values, that define the basic assumptions that people stick to. So, firstly, there's stories. These are memories, events, people. Who are the heroes? Who are the villains? What do people talk about when they think about your organization? Then we have symbols, which we've talked about a little bit already, about artifacts. Power structures are important. How do decisions get made? Who has influence? So is the organizational structure, but specifically, where do the unwritten rules of power lie? We need to look at the control systems. What's in place? How do we measure things? How do we reward? And very importantly, we need to look at rituals and routines, and this is where a lot of culture comes from. What are the daily activities and the acceptable behaviors? So I kind of like this model to kind of take a look at what was happening in our kind of basic assumptions. So what we did is we communicated, we got all the team involved in this, we taught them about the models, and then we started to survey them, to survey what they thought were the important things around these 6 factors. Followed up with one-to-one interviews, and this is what we found. So, first of all, got some great stories actually. So everybody thought personal growth is the thing they talk about when they talk about our team at Mumsnet, about making friends. They talk about people's leaving dues, because we like a celebration or two. And they talk about perhaps some misperceptions about our team itself. So when we looked at symbols, they talked about our team lunches and our stand-ups, and our Friday afternoons when we get beer out and we have music and we have learning time. We talked about power structures. Everyone feels they was listened to, but power is concentrated at the top between myself and my head of engineering and our CEO, and everything tends to flow through us, and that's not making them move very fast. We looked at the organisational structure. Previously, we weren't in our squads, and we felt that was a bit siloed. We looked at control systems, and we felt they were just a little bit too all over the place. And we looked at routines and rituals, and people picked out things like perpetual lateness of people in the team meet, the learning time, constantly posting updates to Slack. These are the things that people signalled. So what's interesting about this? So you can kind of look at that and think, there's some good stuff there. That's great, let's keep doing it. And there's some bad stuff there. Let's try and fix it. But what I think is important about this analysis is when you compare it to what your values are. And if we now look at our values, what you'll actually see is that none of those things that are happening, very few of those things that are happening across those six sectors, so those 6 segments, contribute to our values. We're just doing nothing that sends signals to move faster, obsess over users, or experiment or ship often. We're not really doing anything about practicality over perfection. The only thing we're getting right is continuous learning and innovation. So you can kind of see how this tool and understanding what's happening at the moment is a really, really good way to kind of map that to your values and thinking, are these things going to stick? And in this case, we didn't think they were. So what we decided to do is refactor them. So, and I'm going to have to use my notes for this. It's a bit of a complicated slide, so bear with. So we kept the stuff that we really liked. So, it's a friendly place to work. There's a great good work-life balance. Beer o'clock music, democratic, all voices heard. They're all really, really, really good things. So let's keep them. But then let's take our values and let's assign them a number. And let's start looking at some of the initiatives we could put in place that creates a cultural web that supports those values. So First of all, let's start with moving fast. Well, let's look at our control systems and let's just fix that. Let's get all the sprint management that's a mess and sort it out. So there's no impediment to moving fast. What we also found out is that our code reviews were just a real blocker for people. We were using code reviews in the wrong way. We were using them as a kind of final QA test point rather than the kind of advisory, write some great code point. So let's fix that, and let's also look at this power structure issue, where myself and the other senior people are slowing things down. How can we do something? We can't change that power structure, but we can do something to speed it up. So we put in some initiatives to address that. The second thing, we want to be great about obsessing over users. So what can we do about that? Well, let's look at stories, and we know that we all like a celebration at Mumsnet. So what we did is we introduced what we call the wins and fails sessions, and we're running a lot of experiments. And when we get to a point where we have a batch of experiments that complete, and what we do is we have a win. Yep, it worked. Our hypothesis was right. We're going to implement that for real. Or we have a fail. No, it didn't work. But do you know what? That's great, because at least we know that hypothesis is something we can now drop. So let's celebrate that. Let's turn that into a big celebration. Let's get the drinks out. Let's create some drama and theatre and story around it. And that kind of changes. Let's change that negative thing of our celebrations about people leaving to our celebrations about being our successors. Second thing we could do is let's just create some really simple symbols. Let's get all our personas on the wall. So when you walk into our room, you've got all our personas up there, blown up in massive A3 sort of pages, and you can kind of see these are the Mumsnet users. Let's talk about what can we do about experimentation? We love to experiment, so let's get hack days in there and hackathons. But let's also put a symbol around experimentation up. Let's put all our experiments on a big board for everyone to see. And again, every time they're walking past it, there's this symbol communicating. We experiment, we experiment, we experiment. So we all know what's in progress, what won, what failed. Okay. Shipping was a big problem for us. We weren't shipping code often enough, but we knew that we really wanted to get into this mentality of let's ship every sprint, and a sprint's 2 weeks for us. So what could we do there? Well, let's create some rituals and routines. So we now have every Thursday morning we have our shipping review and our shipping forecast, where we look at what's on the roadmap to be shipped, what is being shipped, and how are we going. And we do that as a team, and we've really embedded that into our everyday routines and lives. We want to improve our communication and collaboration. So let's do something about these power structures things. Let's try putting some more empowerment into our teams. We'll pair up product people. We'll pair up team leaders and tech leads, and we'll give them ownership of more products. We want to get great at testing, and we weren't doing anything with testing before. So let's put some control systems in. Let's make end-to-end testing a part of every single thing we do. So we've got some automated testing software. Let's really make it part of the team's everyday roles. We're putting end-to-end testing and checking them. And what happened here is we found that there was an added benefit, and we got a symbol out of this. So we have this end-to-end test suite. It runs on the hour every hour, and it posts to Slack every time there's, whether it's a success or a fail. And what we noticed is everybody started watching this Slack channel, and every time we got a fail, people were like, "Oh my God, there's a fail! We've got to fix this." So let's put a big screen up in the room which shows this Slack channel going up, and we've created a symbol which starts to embed this even more. So you kind of get I'm not going to go through the rest of them in detail, but you kind of get the idea of what we're doing here. We're trying to create initiatives in these 6 areas which create signals in to support our values. I'll just skip through. So that's the kind of theory. That's what we've been doing about it. So what's happened so far, and what have we learned? So we're about halfway through this journey, halfway through the implementation. We found out that it's had a really good effect on team morale. So team morale's really shot up. So we every quarter we do a bunch of survey questions, and we're scoring about 8.04 out of 10 at the moment for this is a great place to work. I'm enjoying what I do. We thought it was really important to bring the whole team into this, and we did this. This was a decision we made at the start. It wouldn't really work if this was something me and the senior team did and went off and just implemented. So from the very beginning, we explained the theory, we explained the process we were going to go through, and we brought the team along with us to really, really make it stick. And everybody in the team wants this to work. We started with the initiatives that people like the best, so the learning. So everyone likes to progress and learn. We started with these. Let's do the good things first, and the not so good things like tracking and admin and control later. And we found out we couldn't do too much at once, so trying to put anything more than 2 initiatives in at once just didn't work for us. We've got to give them a chance to stick. And lastly, we found out that some things worked really, really well, and other things just didn't work at all. So it's really, really important to involve everybody in the team. Keep asking for feedback, bringing them in, what initiatives are working, which ones are not, and changing our approach. And that's it. Thank you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. Do we have any questions? Yep.
Thank you, Jason. I love how self-aware that initiative is, and I hope it's going well so far. In terms of the types of people that you look for, has that changed in terms of, so before you started this initiative and then what you look for in someone and now, has there been any change in that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, this also relates into a bigger initiative in Mumsnet to look at our entire values, but what we've actually done now is we've been very clear about stating our values and looking for behaviours that exhibit those values, and now we check that interview. So what we do is part of the final stage of our interview process is what we call a values interview, where we specifically look for evidence of people exhibiting behaviours that map to the ones that we're looking for. And what we found really important about that is you have to do it. You don't have to, but it works better if you do it with somebody who isn't a part of your team. So for all tech ones, for example, our chief operating officer will do them, or our commercial officer will do them.